Why have politicians in Israel and the US been opposing a historic nuclear deal with Iran? The UN Security Council has unanimously approved a draft resolution of the comprehensive joint plan of action between Tehran and the P5+1 group of countries over Iran's nuclear activities. The understanding between Iran and the US, France, Britain, China, Russia and Germany limits Iran's nuclear program in exchange for the removal of sanctions. Already, it has received strong praise from around the globe. However, the leading pro-Israel lobbying group, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, known as AIPAC, has allocated tens of millions of dollars for a campaign to encourage Congress to block the agreement between Iran and world powers. To ease concerns, US Defense Secretary Ashton Carter visited Israel, and the Obama administration has been selling the accord to allies in the Middle East, as well as to a skeptical Congress. But it is clear the Israel lobby is exerting great pressure on American politicians to reject the nuclear settlement. How do the public feel about Israel's influence on US foreign policy? Why is it that Tel Aviv and Washington are the only two to oppose this historic nuclear agreement? And have these two governments made the world safer or more dangerous? These are the simple questions we sought to answer. Let's begin with the fact that Iran has negotiated a resolution with the P5+1 countries over its nuclear program. How has the media in the US approached Iran and these talks? That's the question we put to the American public.
I think the media has been largely pro-Obama. I've only heard one real on Charlie Rose specifically, someone giving a very articulate kind of description of why the agreement may not be in our long-term favor in terms of the power balance in the Middle East. But I think most of the media I've seen has been very pro-agreement, pro-Obama, pro what this will mean for kind of the next 10 years in Iran.
Well, the media has been very much driven by, I think, the Republican primaries. And so Trump has driven the narrative of deal making, whether or not they got a good deal or not. My impression is that there's a lot more nuance to it than the narrative has been exposed to.
The approach that the U.S. has been taking is definitely in the favor of the United States, and that's the type of protection that we as the United States people expect from our government.
Well, I'm not a U.S. resident, so I don't have that much knowledge on it, but I can imagine that they've been very keen to show how good this is for America and how it shows that America has control over all the other countries.
I feel like the media is kind of bashing it and making it sound like other bad stuff is going to come of it.
Man, I don't know. I don't care for the news. The way that I saw a little bit of that woman, the Rachel Maddow show, and I feel like a lot of it is just talking about how other news sources are taking the Iranian troubles and our agreement on it.
Well, pretty sensational. I think most of the media is really emphasizing what the Republicans have to say about it as opposed to what's really happening, or making any attempt to explaining in detail what's really going on.
The U.S. media. Well, I watch Fox News and CNN, and from what I see, many people are against, in the media, are against the treaty.
That's how the public perceive the media angle on the nuclear agreements with Iran. We asked our experts to clarify the media's approach towards these historic talks.
So first of all, the recent public opinion polls in the US shows that the majority of Americans, 60% of Americans, including the majority of Jewish Americans, support the deal with Iran. But this is not reflected in the US media outlets. The majority of them have a hostile attitude towards the Iranian deal. Admittedly, New York Times and the Christian Science Monitor are broadly speaking supportive of the deal, but the Wall Street Journal, the Fox News, which is a dominant news outlet in the US, are extremely hostile. And Washington Post has got a sort of mixed position in between.
The media in general is divided in two sections. One of them supporting Israel, did not like the agreement at all, and the other side mutual, and they were surprised, to be honest with you, by the agreement, how America agreed to sign this agreement, and they praised Iran, in fact, for their patience and for their determination.
The nuclear agreement has been welcomed by the international community, except by Israel and the US Congress. Why are these two the only two to oppose the result? We asked the public.
I think Israel is just worried for what it'll mean for them. I think the leadership in Iran has been not secretive about how they feel towards Israel, and that's been a very contentious relationship, so that's not surprising. Also, Netanyahu was sort of on his own campaign to kind of create these kinds of feelings, I think. And in terms of Congress, it's just an election year, so yeah. Good
question. That might actually show that it's not that much in favor of America, but instead for the whole world. So because Israel and the US, they're very close friends and have good relations, so that might actually show that it's more a worldwide resolution instead of just American resolution.
Some can say that they have been opposing them, and some can say that they have been neutral. In my opinion, I feel that they have been more or less neutral.
Well, the U.S. Congress, to a large extent, is owned by Israel, and Israel has real concerns being in the Middle East, and there have been threats made against Israel and Israel's well-being. But there's no objectivity whatsoever in trying to deal with this or any Middle Eastern negotiation or discussion.
Well, there are those in Israel who have, who've said that Iran has called for the destruction of the state of Israel, and there's some in Congress who remember the hostage crisis and how, in 1979 we waited over a year for many hostages to be let out of Iran, and that there's still U.S. prisoners in Iran that haven't been let go despite all of these talks.
I'm not really sure about that one. I'm not really quite sure. I don't know. They had a good disagreement, but I'm not sure why.
Well, Israel, of course, has a huge security threat reason, and the Congress, of course, is posturing for election, and it's Republican-controlled Congress.
Israel? Man, I have no idea. The U.S. Congress is understandable, but why is... I didn't even know that.
Well, maybe because the United States wants to have the power. The United States government wants to have the power. I'm not really sure why everybody else can't have the same technology, but it seems a little fishy to me, if you ask me. Hopefully it's for a good reason.
Is there an objective reason for Israeli and American hostility towards this nuclear agreement? Our experts explain.
Well, Israel has manufactured this crisis in the first place. The Israeli intelligence services, they fabricated documents to implicate that Iran is involved in creating nuclear weapons, and they created this crisis in order to divert attention from their oppression of Palestinian people. So they always need this external threat to explain and justify their aggression against Palestinians and their refusal to recognize their rights. The US Congress, of course, is dominated by pro-Israeli Republicans who have got vested interest in promoting conflict abroad, having a sort of bogeyman outside the US. And they want to promote the interests of the industrial military complex, selling billions of dollars of weapons. Therefore, they want a kind of enemy outside, and they also support Israel. So for these reasons, they are against the deal.
Of course, this is expected. Israel has been the dominating power in the area for the last 60 years, and it has a nuclear weapon. Of course, it has this status to continue rather than to have another country competing with it. This is why it is opposing for the last 20 years, or since the project, Iranian nuclear project started, Israel been always opposing this project, and the last attempt was by Netanyahu when he went to the Congress and gave his speech devoted only for the Iranian nuclear project, and he failed. And Obama said it was only rhetoric, the speech, and Netanyahu did not give alternative. So failed. Netanyahu failed. Netanyahu opposing this project because it wants to have the upper hand always. Nobody in there. So it can frighten countries in the area and blackmailing them. This is the reason. It will continue to oppose the agreement. The Congress, of course, is under the influence of Israel, definitely. And many of them are Christian Zionists. They want the upper hand for Israel.
How do you feel about the influence of Israel on American foreign policy? That's a question we put to the American public.
Well, it's of course extensive, and it's a strategic relationship that has a very predictable impact.
I don't think Israel influences U.S. foreign policy very much. Obama is very anti-Israel, and America helps Israel because it's in America's interests, not for a love of Israel.
Well, we have and Israel has got a really heavy influence. They are our allies. We provide them weapons, and we cooperate with our intelligence services, Homeland Security, with Mossad and so forth, and with the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. So we're really close allies with Israel. But some are not sure if that's really in the U.S. best interests.
What do you think?
I personally think it is. Israel might be a hard-nosed country, but you have to think of what Jewish people have been through all of those years. I'd be hard-nosed too. But there have been some human rights abuses with the Gaza Strip, and it's really hard to tell. It's just such a difficult moral question, and it's such a fine line.
I feel that there's not much influence in the U.S.'s foreign policy when it comes to Israel. And the influence that there is subtle to none.
I don't really know very much about that.
Overpowering.
What do you mean?
I mean that, we actually have a historic document that says we should have no entangling alliances, but Israel is treated like a suburb of New York City.
And that's not good for us, you don't think?
Of course not. We're Americans. The first concern should be the well-being of the United States of America, and that's how people should vote.
It's too big, in my opinion. They have too much power over what's going on here, even though they're very far away. And I think that it should be, if anyone should control what's happening, it's going to be the U.S. that has a say in Israel, even though I'm opposed to that as well.
Well, I think that is kind of deep because usually United States, we always go to other countries and help them out, but we really don't help our own country out. So maybe we need to help our own country out a little more and then support other countries.
You think the U.S. is too influenced by Israel?
I believe so. I believe they very much so.
I'm not really sure on the topic, but I'm really not sure on that topic.
That's a good question. I'm not very kind of equipped to answer that.
We put the same question about Israeli influence on American foreign policy to our experts.
Well, I think the biggest issue in the Middle East, which has created all the problems, including the rise of terrorism in recent years, they all stem from the fact that Israel has had a white card to have aggression against Palestinians all these decades, to refuse international law and not to grant Palestinians their rights, to follow a policy of ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, and this with the staunch support of the US. So the staunch support of the US to the Israeli policy in the Middle East has created all the problems that we have in the Middle East. So as a person who comes from the Middle East, of course, I'm not happy at all with the politics of the United States, because it's creating chaos in the Middle East, and the chaos is continuing to get worsened and worsened.
Of course, there is a great influence, and this is a very well-known fact. I mean, there are books written about the Zionist lobby and Israel or Israeli lobby, many books, and how this lobby influencing the Congress and the policy of Israel. So far, they haven't succeeded in stopping the agreement between Iran and 5+1, fortunately.
How would Israel and the US Congress have liked the nuclear talks with Iran to have ended? Is what the public thought.
Ended how?
Like to just have stopped?
Well, there's opposing interests. Strategy emerges from the reality. And the reality is that there's a huge opportunity, supposedly, to make a deal that Obama sees. And it's, of course, against Israel's interests to make that deal because it brings them closer to having a threat. To the extent that we really know what's going on, I doubt that we really do.
That's a good question. I'm not in their minds, but I think they'd prefer either no treaty or a treaty where the UN and America can have free access to their nuclear sites at any time with no warning.
Without any resolution.
You don't think they wanted any deal?
None whatsoever. No.
Absolutely, yes.
And why?
I think for Congress, it's just another kind of notch in their belt of arguments against Obama. They want him to maintain this image of a lame duck president, and he's not. He's actually proving to be the opposite in this last kind of year of his presidency. So I think they would have loved that. I think for Israel, it would have been vindication of what they've been kind of preaching this entire time too.
Of course, in the favor of the United States.
Well, they ended with an agreement to stop all. It's not to stop all nuclear development, is it?
Well, if they oppose it, then maybe they wouldn't have wanted us to have an agreement in the end. I think it's great that we have this agreement. It's been 2 years, right, that we've been talking about this. I don't know.
It's better to talk to people than...
Exactly. We should all be friends. In the future, in a perfect world, we would all have a really nice communication. One day we're all going to be one country.
They want them to keep going because they want to be able to hold on to the nuclear power and stuff between the United States and Israel. I'm really not that sure about the situation, but I know over the years, the United States and Israel had to have their connections. And as I remember correctly, it's unfair to the Palestinians over there.
Our experts provide their perspective on what Israel and US Congress would have liked from the nuclear talks with Iran.
Well, I mean, they don't want a resolution to the Iranian sort of nuclear crisis because they want this so-called enemy, this so-called rogue state that they sort of demonize all the time in order to justify aggression against Palestinians, to justify selling billions of dollars of arms to Saudis and other Persian Gulf monarchies. And obviously, what they have stated is that Iran should forego its nuclear rights, so it should not have any enrichment program at all. And of course, Iran would not have accepted that, which meant that this conflict would just perpetuate forever.
Of course, they would like to have it failed, definitely, no question about it. And all of them have been working, Israel and the Congress have been working for decades to stop the agreement and to fail it, in fact. But fortunately, they couldn't. Obama was determined to have the agreement signed because he thought it will be for the interest of the world, for the peace world. This is why he agreed, in fact. He said, Netanyahu, Israel, they never gave any alternative. Therefore, this is the best option, and this is why they have signed.
Is the world a safer or a more dangerous place as a result of the influence of Israel and the US Congress? Is the public's view on that big question?
I mean, I think having opinions on both sides of the debate is healthy. I wouldn't say that makes the world a safer or less safe place. But I think this agreement, from what my understanding of it, is a good thing. So I don't agree with them, but I think having healthy debates is always good.
I think it's like more dangerous. I believe it's more dangerous because we don't know what they might do yet. You know, we accept, you know, a lot of people, but we don't know what their ulterior motives are. And so hopefully I pray that everything goes well with that.
I guess it'd be safe because if they don't want everybody to have nuclear weapons, there'll be less nuclear power in the world, so it's less of a chance to have more explosions. So yeah.
Well, it depends. I think the deal is going to go through anyway, but it's good to have some opposition because maybe the Iranians will realize that they have to work towards an honest peace in order to make this work and to join the international community, and that the international community isn't going to accept any destructive barbarism and is going to make them, in exchange for their freer trade privileges, is going to make them toe the line for peace and international peace.
I feel that the world is dangerous no matter what, and anytime you can provide your opinion, you must always do so no matter what the consequences are.
I think it's a safer place.
As a result of them opposing it?
Yes, because they, in my opinion, previously they've been opposed to some otherwise good resolutions because it didn't fill out what they wanted to do, but was more for world peace.
I think that because of the agreement here, this is a really great thing. All we did was talk about an issue. I think that we can do this with a lot of other countries.
We gave the last word to our experts on whether Washington and Tel Aviv make the world safer or more dangerous.
Okay, well, the nuclear deal between Iran and P5+1 is a humiliating defeat for Israel and the Republican-dominated US Congress, because they needed this perpetuated conflict in order to justify their policies. So therefore, what this deal brings about is, for the first time in the Middle East, the possibility of reconsideration of the problems in the Middle East with a view to really solve the problems in the Middle East. So I think the world will be a much safer place without the domination of US politics by Israeli policies of aggression and the US Congress policies of perpetual conflict abroad.
Of course, I mean, if the world goes with Israel and the Congress, definitely it will be dangerous because Israel is always threatening the countries in the area and making wars, as you know. War on Lebanon, war on Gaza. So probably all these wars with the sign of agreement, maybe they will be stopped and the world will be safer with this agreement signed between Iran and the 5+1.
A vote is expected in US Congress about the nuclear deal with Iran after the August recess. But already the American-Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, have called on Capitol Hill to reject it. So while the international community has warmly welcomed this nuclear deal, US Zionist lobbyists in America and Israel itself have sought to derail it. This historic agreement can only do good for international relations. But it seems that leaders in Tel Aviv and congressmen in Washington would rather see them fail, suggesting they care more about their own perceived national self-interest than they do about what's best for the world.